It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to the second semester BCA program, and we will discuss this course on inferential discrete mathematics today. To begin with, I will give you an overview of the 5 units covered in this course. The first unit that we will discuss today is on logic. We will introduce the true and false nature of statements. We will define what truth tables are. We will introduce tautologies, tautological implications, equivalences of two statements, replacement processes, normal forms of compound statements, and we also look at theory of inference and predicate calculus covered as part of this unit. The second unit will deal with functions and relations. We will start by introducing Cartesian products of sets, representing a relation using 3 different forms, operations on relations, what we refer to as equivalence relations. We will also discuss the closure of a relation using the Waschel algorithm. Followed by that, we will have functions. We will classify functions into many types and also look at inverse of functions and compositions of functions. The third unit will be on recurrence relations and their relation with sequences. We will look at how to solve a recurrence relation in 2 different methods, namely the algebraic solution and the generating function solution. We will complete this unit by discussing common recurrence relations, primitive recurrence functions, and partial recursive functions. The fourth unit will be on classical algebra, a formal introduction into the fundamentals of classical algebra. We will have a look at what constitutes a group, what subsets are called as subgroups, classify groups into cyclic groups and normal subgroups, quotient groups, symmetric groups, and the kind. The final unit in this course will be on lattices and Boolean algebra. We will introduce lattices, talk about a few properties, understand what a Boolean algebra is, and learn how to simplify Boolean polynomials using the method of K-maps. Today's lecture will be on the first unit, logic. This graphic, the image on your screen, clearly tells you the bottom line of this idea called Boolean logic. All data that is stored, processed, retrieved, and fed as an output are basically dealt with in the form of zeros and ones. Most of you who have already shown inspiration to take up this course on BCA might know this very simple fact. But how does a computer interpret clean English sentences into zeros and ones? How does the computer understand every information that is being fed in the form of zeros and ones? That is where we will start today's lecture. We will have a look at 2 simple statements and understand the true or false nature of every statement that is being fed. The first one is about the year 2020. It says the year 2020 is a leap year. So most of us know that this is true. So this takes a truth value as being true. We know that this is right. We have 29 days in the month of February only this year, not the one before, not the one after, but only in 2020. So this statement is true, and therefore its truth value is true. We will denote it by the letter T. The second statement here is about the previous leap year. It says the last leap year was observed in the year 2018. Now we know that this is false, because leap years are observed once in every 4 years. So the previous leap year must have been observed in 2016. This is false, hence its truth value is false. Now this is where the idea of zeros and ones come in. We can denote a true value by 1 and a false value by a 0. Hence, any statement that is being fed into a computer can be classified into either this or the one below, either true or false. There's no middle ground, and that's how the computer interprets most statements. We'll have a look at a few examples and we'll classify each of them into as being true or false. The first one says the sum of 2 and 3 is 5. We're trying to mean something like this: 2 plus 3 is 5, and that's right. Therefore that takes up true as its truth value. Second one says 4 times 7 is 28. The product of 4 and 7, the multiplicative answer, that is again 28, and that's true. The last one says Christmas is celebrated on the 25th of December, and we know that this is also true. So each of these statements 1, 2 and 3 have been assigned a single truth value. All of them are found to be true. The next set is on your screens again. It says the sum of 3 and 3 is 6, but it says the sum of 3 and 3 is 9, which is not true. It's actually 6, but the statement claims that the total is 9. That's wrong. That's false. And it says the product of 4 and 9 is 13. In fact, the sum of 4 and 9 is 13, not the product. The product of 4 and 9 is 36 and not 13. So this statement once again takes up false value. The last one says there are 30 days in the month of February. It's once again wrong. It can have a maximum of only 29 days on any given year. Maximum is 29. This again is false. So such statements which make the computer decide between the two choices or more choices available and respond accordingly can be classified into being true or false. That is where we introduce this idea called logic. Further, we'll have a look at interpretations of statements, connecting two statements, and operations on statements. Next, the first such operation is the negation of a given statement. How do you negate a given statement? An example for this is on your screen. The sum of 2 and 3 is 5, the statement. What does it mean to negate this statement? We see the definition, the formal definition on your screen. The negation of a statement P is the statement tilde P. Now, this symbol, like a wave here, usually represents the negated statement. The tilde symbol, the symbol is called as tilde. It talks or it denotes the negation of a statement. Some textbooks also refer to this in this form. Some textbooks also refer to this in this form. It's this. Both of them denote the negated version of the given statement. And what does it mean to negate a statement? The definition is on the screen again. If P assumes a truth value, the negated P, the negated version of the P, is assigned a value that is the exact opposite. So whatever be the truth value of P, the negated P gets the exact opposite notation, exact opposite truth value. So we have an example here. The sum of 2 and 3 is 5. It's a negated statement. We are referring to the negated P. We call this as P. The negated P is read as follows: the sum of 2 and 3 is not 5. Now if you can look at the definition, you can learn this. It's not the case that it is P. You're just denying it. We're not saying 2 and 3 give you 6 or 2 and 3 give you 7. We say that 2 and 3 is not 5. The strategic position of the word not helps us define the negated version of any given statement. So the operation that the first operation that we'll discuss is the negation of any given statement. We have a couple of examples here. The product of 4 and 7 is 28. You know that it is a true statement. It takes up the truth value as T. Its negated form, let's call this as statement P, then negated P will be the product of 4 and 7 is not 28. Now we are not speculating whether the product of 4 is 27 or 29 or 30. We are just denying what we learnt in the previous sentence. We are just saying that we are looking for its opposite. It was supposed to be 28, now it is not. Now we know that the statement is wrong because 4 and 7 always give you 28. Now if I claim that the product of 4 and 7 is not 28, then of course it's false. Therefore the truth value of the second statement, negated P, is false. The second statement is again, Christmas is celebrated on the 25th of September. Let's call the statement as Q. Now its negated version should go on like this: Christmas is not celebrated on the 25th of September of December. So we're not talking about a different month or a different date. We're not saying it is celebrated on 24th or 26th, or we're not speculating whether it is being celebrated on December or November or September. What we're saying is the exact opposite. We're just denying it. We're saying the exact opposite of what is being told in Q. So negated Q should be written like this. So if Q takes the value T, Q obviously takes the value T because it is true. The negated Q will take its truth value as false, as in F. The last one, let's call this as R. Sum of 3 and 3 is 9. So we claim that 3 plus 3 is 9. Now whether it is right or not is a different matter. Its negated version should read like 3 plus 3 is not equal to 9. It is just that it is not 9, or I should say the sum of 3 and 3 is not 9. That's what happens when you talk about negated R. We are not speculating what the sum of 3 and 3 is. We are just denying what we had in the previous sentence. A couple of more examples. Product of 4 and 9 is 13. That's the given statement. Now we don't worry about the correctness of this statement. We know that this takes up a truth value as false because 4 and 9 give you 36. So if this is S, you know the statement by S, and the negated S should read as 4 times 9 is not 36. Sorry. 4 times 9 is not 13, and we know that it's true because 4 and 9 actually give us 36 when we multiply it. The last one, again, this is something which you've already seen. The statement says there are 30 days in the month of February. We know that it takes a false value. F is the assigned truth value. So if you call this as T, then negated T will be there are not 30 days. In February. That we know to be true. So this is how you negate a given statement. We have seen 5 examples as to how any given statement can be negated, and the takeaway from this is the truth values that are being assigned to a statement and its negated version are always opposites of each other. Okay. The next idea is about connective. Now in the last slide we had a look at an operation on one statement. So you take a statement P, you operate, and you call the operation as the negation. We'll also have a look at other operations. The first operation that we'll pick up is called as a connective, which will combine one or more statements in a particular form. And what is this combination, or how do you relate with this idea of a combination or a connective? We'll just discuss a small example. Now this is something which most of us do every day. We try to log into our email account. We sub in the username, we sub in the password, and then we get the access to the email account. Now what does the computer decide as to, how does the computer decide as to whether access can be provided or not? This way. If both the username and the password are entered correctly, then we get access to the email account. This is where you combine two parts, two pieces of information, one about the username and one about the password. You're combining both. And how are you combining them? You want both of them to be right. So one statement is about the password, it says my username is so and so, and the other statement is my username, it says my username is so and so. And how do I combine both? How does the processor or the compiler combine both these statements? It's by using this idea called a connective. And how does a connective work? We have the formal definition on your screens now. The conjunction, that is the connective used in this case. The conjunction of two statements P and Q is a connective between the two statements, and it's another statement whose true value, the truth value, is defined only in some cases, not all. The formal definition explains this. Look out for it on your screens. A true value is returned only when both statements assume a true value. So there are two statements P and Q and you're connecting them using a conjunction, then that conjunction takes a true value only when both statements are true. In other words, there is a statement P, there is a statement Q, you're combining them using a conjunction as a connective. That connective is referred to or denoted by this, the conjunction of P and Q. Now, when will this statement take a true value or a false value? Because in the previous operation we found out how to negate any given statement. So we explained when it takes up a true value, when it takes up a false value. So the same discussion will be extended here when we combine two statements. Two statements P and Q, when they are combined using a conjunction, the result P conjunction Q will take a true value only when both P and Q are true, and a false value in all other cases. That's how this connective is defined, and this truth table helps us understand it better. P being a single statement has only two possible answers. It can either be a true statement or a false statement. Q being a single statement once again has only two possible truth values, either it is a true value or it's a false. But when you combine these two using a connective, there are four cases possible, both of them being true, both of them being false, one false and one true in two different ways. Now in each cases we will have a look at the truth value of the conjunction of P and Q, the connective between P and Q. So in the definition that we saw in the previous slide, we saw that a true value is returned only when both of them assume a true value. It's false in all other cases. So if P is true and Q is true, it is true only here. Only possibility of a true value, and it is false in all other cases. That is how a conjunction is used to combine two statements. So once again I will emphasize on the definition. There are two statements and the two statements are combined using a connective, then this combined version using a conjunction takes up a true value only when both are true, and it's false in all other cases. Or you can relate to this idea of a conjunction using the same example. If both username and password have been entered correctly, access is granted to your email account. Now what happens if you enter one of them incorrectly? You will never gain access. So that's what it says. The username is entered correctly and the password is entered incorrectly, then you won't get access to your account. The username is entered incorrectly but password is entered correctly, you still don't get access to your account. If both of them are wrong, you still don't get access to your account. Only when both of them are right, there is access. So that works using a conjunction as a connective. We'll discuss one more example to understand another type of a connective here. It says a ticket traveling examiner or a ticket examiner in a train is supposed to permit a person to travel only if the driving license or his PAN card or both have been presented as proof of identity. This is the instruction given to a ticket examiner. Any traveler who boards the train should hold either this license or this the PAN card or both in order to travel without any trouble. Only if these have been submitted as the proof of identity, the examiner is supposed to permit him to travel. Now here you can understand how it is different from the previous example. There you needed both to happen necessarily. Here both need not happen necessarily. There is an or here. The or talks about the next connective and we call it as a disjunction. Disjunction. We'll look at the formal definition in the next slide. The disjunction of two statements P and Q is the connective expressed by this notation. The disjunction of P and Q. It's a connective, so it's a combined statement. It's a combination of two statements. And what happens to this combination? When does it take a true value or a false value? It takes a false value only when both statements assume a false value. So P disjunction Q takes a false value only when P is false and Q is false. In all other cases, it takes a truth value as being true. The next slide has the truth table which explains the concept. So we have the four combinations of the values assumed by both P and Q, and we see that the disjunction takes a false value in only one of the four available combinations. In all the others, it is always true. It's false in only one particular instance. What is that instance? When both are false. When both are true, it's true. When one of them is true, it's still true. Therefore, this is what you call as the disjunction. If you would like to discuss this with the same example as like on permitting a traveler to continue traveling, these are the cases that we have. Let's denote the fact that the person has his driving license by P and that he has his PAN card by Q. Then this is the set of all outcomes possible. If he has submitted the driving license but not the PAN card, he is still permitted to travel. If he submitted only the PAN card but not the license, he is still permitted to travel. If he submitted both, he is still permitted to travel. If he doesn't submit both, if either of the documents has been submitted, he is okay to travel. But if neither of them is submitted, he cannot be permitted to travel. So it's a false only when both are false, and it's a true in all other cases. That's how you understand this concept called a disjunction as a connective combining two statements P and Q. One more connective that we can talk about is the exclusive OR of two statements P and Q. It's a small variation of the one which we just saw. It's called the exclusive OR. We will denote this by this symbol. The exclusive OR of two statements P and Q. Once again, it's a combination. It's going to take up two statements as inputs. So what happens to the output? When does the output assume a true value or a false value? This is how. The exclusive OR takes up a true value only when exactly P or Q is true. Only one of them must be true. You cannot have both of them to be true or both of them to be false. one should be right, the other should not be. Only then a true value is returned. It's exclusive. It's not a shared property. It either belongs to P or Q, not both, not neither also. A false value is returned in all other cases. So only when one of the two statements is true, exactly one of the statements is true, this connective returns a true value. If both are true, the result is false. If both are false, the result is also false. You can relate better to this connective using this graphic. The table takes all four possible combinations of the values assigned to both P and Q. Now what happens with the exclusive OR? It takes a true value when P is true but Q is false, the first row, or when P is false but Q is true, the second row. In all other cases it takes up false value. That's what you understand when you say the exclusive OR. It's exclusive, it's not inclusive. You cannot have both, you cannot have neither. You must have exactly one of the two statements to be true. Now we'll go to the other kind of connective that is possible between two statements P and Q, and this is where it gets really interesting, because most statements or most instructions, commands which are given to a processor are conditional statements. There is always a decision making that is happening before a computer. It always decides whether to continue solving this problem or stop solving this problem. There's always a decision making happening, and most of these decisions are the results of what happens when a conditional statement is being executed. We'll have a look at what a conditional statement is. If P and Q are two individual statements and you are talking about the conditional statement involving both of them, then this is how you mean to combine this. This is one of the two ways to combine P and Q. How does it read? If P is true, so is Q. And we denote this conditional by this symbol, the arrow. It's not the and, which is the conjunction, or the or, which is the disjunction, or the exclusive or. It's the arrow which will represent the conditional statement. So what happens? When does this conditional statement take up true or false values? That is defined on your screen. A false value is returned only when P is true but Q is false. A true value is returned in all other cases. So we have been doing this for the past 3 operations involving statements. We also discussed the same when we negated a statement, when we combine two statements using a conjunction, a disjunction, an exclusive OR. So we'll discuss the same thing here. When does such a connective in the form of a conditional, when does such a conditional assume a true value or a false value? Now the definition says it takes a false value only when P is true but Q is false, and a true value is returned in all other cases. So whenever there is a conditional, you have specific names for the two statements. You call one of them, namely P, as the hypothesis, and the other, namely Q, as its consequence. So in a conditional, you have specific names to both statements that are part of it. One of them, the cause of the conditional, is what you call as a hypothesis, and the other, which is the result of the conditional, is what you call as a consequence. Now we'll discuss this conditional in detail using a truth table. Now recall that we saw this particular definition which says a false value is returned only when the hypothesis is true but the consequence is false. In all other cases we assume that we have defined it to take up a true value. So hence your truth table for a conditional must look like this. The 4 cases of input instances, and the conditional will have these two output instances in this manner. So what did we say? If P is true but Q is false, the conditional is false. In all other cases it's true. If P is true then Q is true, it's true. If P is false then Q is false, it's still true. If P is false but Q is true, it's still true. That is how you define this connective called as a conditional. We'll have a look at a couple of examples and we'll construct the truth table for each of them to understand this idea of a conditional in a better manner. The first example that we see is a proper conditional, and most of you would relate to what is being discussed here. It talks about two statements. Statement 1 on P, which says today is a Sunday, and statement Q which says today is a holiday. Now the conditional statement wants us to combine these two in this form. It says if today is a Sunday then it's a holiday. If the sentence that claims that today is a Sunday is a true statement, then so is a statement which claims that today is a holiday. Now this is the most frequently given example for a conditional statement. How does it work? Let's try and understand using the truth table for this conditional statement. Let's have P, Q and the conditional. Let's make P assume a true value, which means the day is a Sunday, and Q also a true value, which means it is also a holiday. Then we say that both statements are true because that's how we have assumed it. Therefore the conditional will also maintain the same truth value. What if today is not a Sunday? Maybe it's a weekday. So P assumes a false value. What if Q also assumes a false value? Then it assumes the fact that today is not a holiday. Then we see that P is false and so is Q. Then this also assumes a true value, and it also makes sense. If any given day is not a holiday, it's not a Sunday, then it is most likely that you go to work, you go to college, it will not be a holiday, most likely. So this is also true. Let's do the other one. Let P assume a false value again, which means it is not a Sunday. And Q assume a true value, a holiday. How about this? Do we get holidays which are also on weekends? Is there a chance that a given weekday to be declared as a holiday? Yes, it happens many a time. We have occasions of the Republic Day, the Independence Day, which may fall on a weekday, but still we get an off from work. So it is a possible answer, so the statement still remains true. The conditional still makes sense. What about the last part? It's not a Sunday. I'm sorry. It's not a. It's actually a Sunday. But we are considering the possibility where it's not a holiday. This is the only pair of events which are unlikely to happen, because the statement claims that every Sunday is actually a holiday. But if there comes in a situation where someone claims that today is not a Sunday, the given day is not a Sunday, and also that the given day is not a holiday, then it means that the conditional statement is actually assuming a false value. It's not a holiday despite being a Sunday. There you are violating the hypothesis given here. Hypothesis leads to the conclusion that the given day is a holiday, but you assume the hypothesis to be true, but you are denying the correct consequence, and hence the conditional takes up a false value in only one of the three possible outputs involving P and Q. Let's check a different example. If Mark graduates out of high school, he can apply for this job, or let's make it he can get this job. He can get this job. Just to consider more possibilities, I'm making a small change. Mark graduates out of high school, he can get his job. Let's define the two statements here. Let P denote the statement that Mark graduates out of high school, and Q denote the statement that Mark can get this job. We'll once again discuss all possible cases, P and Q, true and true, false and true, false and false, true and false. What happens in each case to the conditional? The first possible instance says that he is actually graduated of high school, and also that he's got a nice job. So this is actually right, because if by the definition of the conditional we know that when both are true, the result is also true. That's how the conditional statement has been defined. If both are false, let's look at the third row, that it means that he is not graduated of his job, of his high school, and also that he has not got this job, which also happens to be true, because if he has not graduated to high school, then it's obvious that he won't get the job. So this is fine. The second row corresponds to the combination where you know that he has not graduated of high school, but still something has happened and he has got the job, and this is also possible. It will not be possible in only one case, the last case. Look at the last case. You know that he has graduated of high school and you still see that he has not got this job. That's false. That contradicts the definition of the given conditional statement. It says whenever P is true, Q must be true, and you are giving a combination where P is true, P is assuming a true value, but Q is not. Q is assuming a false value. Now such a connector will always take up a false value. Just one more example so that you get familiarized with the idea. Once again we have two statements here. I start early from home. It says I avoid rush hour traffic. What are the four possible cases now? I do start early. I avoid the traffic. The conditional takes up a true value. I do not start early. So I do not avoid, I don't avoid the traffic. That also makes sense. If I turn up late, I will obviously get caught up in the rush hour traffic. The last case, if I do not start early, but still somehow I have avoided the rush hour traffic. So maybe he took the metro, maybe he's like opted to avail a casual leave on that day. So he has still avoided the rush hour traffic despite starting early from home. This is also right. What is wrong? I actually start early, but I do not avoid the traffic. Now this is the only combination that takes up a false value, because the question claims whenever you start early you do avoid the rush hour traffic. But the last combination here implies that I've started early but somehow I've not avoided the traffic. Now that is not in line with the definition of the connective that we just saw, and therefore it takes a false value only in one of the four cases. Another example on the screen is similar. You can understand this. Let P denote the fact that I attend classes regularly. And Q denote the statement that I can get good grades. Now how does this make sense? It's easy. If P is false and Q is true, it still makes sense. I do not attend classes regularly, but somehow I manage to cram all the subjects the day before the exam is being conducted, and somehow I pass, I get good grades. The third scenario is when I do not attend classes regularly and I do not get good marks. This is fine. It's close to what is being mentioned in the statement. The last part, I actually attend classes regularly, but I somehow still fail. Now that's not a proper conditional, and therefore the last instance of truth values takes up a false value. Now this is how you understand a connective. Just like a conjunction, just like a disjunction, just like an exclusive OR, this is also a connective which combines two statements. How does it combine them? Depends on their individual truth values. This connective will take up a true value in all of the possible cases except one in which the hypothesis takes a true value but the conclusion takes up a false value, and that cannot happen. Only that situation calls for a false answer. Yes. Now in the next couple of slides we'll understand how to generate a few more conditional statements based on the original, and we'll discuss three of them to be fair to this topic that's instructed in your curriculum. The first of them is what you call as the converse. You might have heard this word long before when you were trying to show that certain results are true in geometry. You'll always have something which is the converse of something else. This is always possible. The converse of the given conditional P to Q. So the converse is also a conditional except that the order is swapped. Now you say P is true if Q is true. It's not about P leading to the answer of Q, it's Q leading to the answer of P, and that's how you define a converse of a given statement. So the truth table on your screen will help you understand this better. The four possible values of P and Q, the four possible combinations of the values of P and Q are given. Now you know this, we just saw this, how this conditional works. Now the converse of the given conditional works like this. It's basically a conditional. So what do we talk about a conditional? If hypothesis implies consequence, then the conditional hypothesis to consequence takes a true value, a false value, only these two. When does it take a false value? When H is false but still C is true. Only in this case we see that we have a converse with us. So the converse of the given statement is also a conditional, therefore its truth table will also be closely similar to what we saw in the other statement. So if P is true, then Q is true, and that's what you have. It says if P is true, then Q is true. The converse is just the opposite. You just swap P and Q from their places. If Q is true, then P is true. And the corresponding truth table will look like this fourth column here. If Q is true, then P is true. That's right. If Q is true, then P is true. That's still right. But if Q is true, but P is false, that is when you have a false value. And also when both are false, it's still true. That is how you understand the converse of a conditional statement. You just swap the two statements to get the conditional. The next one is the inverse. The inverse of the conditional P arrow Q is a statement that is once again a conditional, but both P and Q are in their negated versions. So you don't do anything to the arrow, you retain the arrow, but this time around you do the negation operation on both statements. You say negation P leads to the conclusion that negation Q is true. So to understand this, for every value of P we'll write its negated form. So if P is true, negation P is false. If P is false, negation P is true. Same happens in the last two rows. Similarly, if Q is false, negation Q is true. If Q is true, negation Q is false. You have these four values explaining what happens when you negate Q. Now consider the conditional from negation P to negation Q. In other words, column 3 represents your hypothesis and column 4 represents your consequence. Now when you consider them in this manner, now you can see that we already saw when a conditional takes up a true value, that's observed in the second row where negated P is true but negated Q is false, then such a conditional will take up a false value. In all other cases, as I've already seen, this conditional takes up only a true value, and that is what you call as an inverse. You don't do anything to the statement, you don't swap anything, you just negate whatever variable that is part of the conditional. That's what you call as the inverse. The most important of them is the next one. It talks about the contrapositive of the conditional if P then Q. The contrapositive is once again easily defined. You swap the order and then negate both variables. So if you say if P is true then Q is true, negate both and then reverse the order. It says if Q is false then P is also false. So the hypothesis and the consequence are swapped when such a conditional is constructed, and the truth table explains this. The four values of P lead to these four values of negated P, and the four values of Q lead to the four values of negated Q. Now if you consider a conditional whose hypothesis is negated Q and consequence is P, then that's what you will have. If negative Q is false and negative P is true, that's right. Both are false, that's right. Both are true, that's right. Only the first combination gives you a false value. All other three are assuming true value. So this is how the contrapositive of a conditional statement is constructed. Now we need all these statements, even if not all, we'll need this last one called as a contrapositive to arrive at like the conclusion behind how the computer thinks. And so we'll come back to this very shortly and we'll discuss this in a more detailed manner. Now the next idea is called equivalence. Now when do you say that two statements are equivalent or two compound statements are equivalent? To understand that idea, let's compare a conditional with the three other possible definitions on connectives. We saw 3 of them so far. The first of them being the converse, the second of them being the inverse, and the last of them being the contrapositive. Now in the same way, can we compare a conditional statement and its inverse, number 1, converse, number 2, contrapositive, number 3? How will they differ? If at all they'll differ, how will they differ? That's what you'll see here. Now for 2 statements P and Q, we are considering both the conditional as well as its converse. The conditional you already know how it assumes truth values. The converse assumes these true values, in which once again only one of them is false but the other 3 are true. Now you compare these 2 conditionals, they don't match. They differ in the top 2 rows of the table and they are alike in the bottom 2 rows of the table. So they are not completely matching each other. So they are not equivalent, they are not one and the same. You are calling it different names because they are different things. What if we consider the inverse of a conditional? Now in the last slide we had a look at the comparison between a conditional and its converse. Now we saw that there are 3 versions of a given statement. The one is the statement itself. There are 3 more, one of them being the converse, the other being the inverse, and the other being the contrapositive. Now when you consider any given statement and its inverse, this is what happens. The conditional takes place here and it has 3 true values and 1 false value. Now its inverse, which you call it in this manner, it also takes up 3 true values and 1 false value, but they are not completely alike. In fact, they differ in 2 places out of the 4 places. So it's a big margin, so they are not equivalent again. We saw that the same thing happened with the converse. They were having different designs of their truth tables. So both converse and the inverse of a conditional need not always represent the same thing as the given statement. That is why we'll have a look at the last part, the contrapositive of a given statement. Let's talk about P and Q, the conditional P to Q, the contrapositive, as we just saw a couple of slides back. Here we saw that a contrapositive is where you both do the switching from Q to negative Q and also the direction of the arrows. That's what you call as the contrapositive. And when you compare a conditional and its contrapositive, you see that the columns are totally identical. You have an F followed by 3 T's, you also have an F followed by 3 T's, despite both conditionals being used by different set of statements. You see that this is how you show that any 2 compound statements are equivalent. You do this by comparing their truth tables. The truth tables are 100% match between the 2 statements, then they are equivalent. In all other cases, the 2 statements cannot be equivalent. The last of the connectives that we will discuss is a biconditional statement. Now you might have guessed what is going to happen. It's a biconditional statement, as in it's a conditional in both ways. If you look at the formal definition on your screen, the conditional statement of 2 statements P and Q, the biconditional statement, the 2 statements P and Q, is the proposition that is given by P if and only if Q. If we had only this, if P then Q, that's what you call as a conditional. That's a one-way conditional. That's a conditional whose hypothesis is P but consequence is Q. Consequence is Q. Now here, that was about a single conditional statement. It's like a one way. You can only travel from point A to point B. You cannot come back on the same road. The conditional is more like a two-way road. It says P if and only if Q. How do you understand that? How do you get this phrase called if and only if? This is what explains that. A true value is returned only when both P and Q are true, or when both P and Q are false. You want the same truth value for both statements, nothing different. In such cases, this connective takes up the truth value as being true. In all other cases, it takes up the truth value as being false, and that's how you understand a biconditional. A biconditional is actually denoted by this symbol, which represents that it's a conditional in both directions. If P is true, then Q is true, and the opposite, if Q is true, so happens with P. That's what you call as a biconditional. It's a two-way condition. There are two conditions involved, and that's why you have a double-headed arrow here. That is why you call it as a biconditional statement. Since we have been looking at the truth tables of all such connectives, let's also discuss what happens to this connective. It's a double-headed arrow. So it says the connective will return a truth value either when both are true or when both are false. Therefore, you see, the bottom two rows of the table always end up being true because they are true together, they are false together. Even if one of them is different, say P is true but Q is not, or Q is true but P is not, then the truth value that is taken up by this biconditional statement is a false value. So this biconditional has such a truth table which explains its procedures. If you would like to discuss an example here, you can have a look at this. A triangle ABC is right angled at B if and only if this is followed. Now, most of you might have recalled what this theorem is about. This is a result which you've already learned in classes 9 and 10 or even earlier classes. This is quite a famous result. It says that a right angle triangle is a triangle is right angled at the vertex B if and only if you have this equation to be true. Now that is what you understand by a biconditional statement. Now what is this biconditional statement? It's true both ways. It's true both ways. Now what do we mean when you say it's true both ways? Let's say the statement P denotes the fact that the angle B is a right angle, and statement Q which says AB square and BC square add up to give you AC square. Now the theorem or the example is given for a biconditional statement. So what do you mean? It's true both ways. If you have any triangle that is right angled at B, then you will always have this observation. Conversely, because we saw that a biconditional is expressed using a double-headed arrow, which comprises of two single-headed arrows in different directions. So this corresponds to the idea that a 90-degree angle at B will ensure that this equation is satisfied. That's what this conditional explains, and that's exactly the Pythagoras theorem. But what is the converse? You switch the direction of the conditional. You say if Q is true, then P is true. So what is Q? Q says that there is some triangle ABC for which AB square plus BC square is actually AC square. And the converse says in such a case the angle B should always be 90 degrees, and that's true. If you have your scales, the rulers, pencils and the protractors ready, you can always try and construct right angle triangles. Whenever the angle is 90 degree, you will observe this pattern. Conversely, for any triangle for which you observe this pattern, the corresponding angle at the center will always be a right angle. So that is an example for a biconditional statement. It's true both ways. Or it's false. When both are false, it's still false. Because if some triangle is not right angle, let's say a triangle like this, ABC, then you will not see this observation. Square of AB and square of BC will not give you the square of AC. That won't be observed. That's a truth. That's like an established truth, and that is the best example we could discuss at the moment for a biconditional statement.